What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a little Pillars of Eternity lore, this time about the Ciphers that we see in-game. Ciphers are a playable class in both of the games, that is to say Pillars of Eternity 1 and Pillars of Eternity 2. Obviously don't know about what that's going to look like in Avowed yet, but first things first, shouldn't actually be any spoilers in this particular video, really, for the two games that are out. However, there might be some contextual stuff in the background that maybe just might spoil something for someone, so just be on the lookout there, I suppose. Or don't, rather. But I do expect this video to be a little shorter than the past few have been. Let's dive into this. What are ciphers and what are they capable of? So, ciphers are people with an extraordinary mental ability. This doesn't necessarily mean intelligence per se. It doesn't necessarily mean they're like a scientist or they're super smart or anything. It just means that they have a unique ability with their mind to perceive and manipulate soul energy in a variety of ways. It seems to derive very much so from their own personal mental ability. Now, the ciphers themselves are relatively uncommon, but they originated, seemingly, in the tribes of Ir-Glanfath, often known as the Glanfathans. We see them pretty prominently throughout the first game. And when the Dyrwood was being colonized, which is the area where that game takes place, there were a lot of wars prior to the actual first game. Something the soldiers and the frontline people would often bring back from those battles is that the Glanfathans would have these people who would wield weapons wreathed in purple flames that seemed to be able to cut away at a person's soul. Now, at first, these tales were often just brushed off as some sort of superstition or just kind of a weird tribal thing that they might have seen and misinterpreted or something. But as these wars raged on, and eventually tensions between the Glanfathans and the Dyrwood people eventually calmed down, at least to the point where they weren't actively at war with each other, and communication was established, people from the Dyrwood were able to verify that this wasn't just something people were recalling incorrectly. These people actually had a name within the tribes that I can't even begin to pronounce, but were referred to as ciphers up to this point, and that name just kind of stuck, that were able to manipulate energy simply with their own mind. And as things had calmed down, conversations between leaders allowed animancers to speak with these ciphers, and a general understanding was reached about what these were. So this actually wound up helping both parties. So the ciphers from the Glanfathan tribes were able to tell the animancers about it, which let the animancers identify people with the latent mental ability to use these powers, and thus actually start training their own ciphers. But moreover, the back and forth helped animancers talk to the ciphers, which helped those ciphers hone their abilities in new ways. What we see in game, as far as like actual gameplay mechanics goes, ciphers typically build focus by using their weapons in combat, and then they spend the focus, which is a resource that they use, on their abilities, which can take a wide variety of forms, such as single target damage or control effects, mind control, that kind of thing. But often these powers will deal raw damage. Raw damage being damage that is not affected by damage reduction, because what they're supposed to be doing is striking at a person's actual soul. Now, the more lore-specific stuff that we don't necessarily get to do in-game, necessarily, are like the mind-reading abilities that we often see ciphers using in-game. It's well known that ciphers are able to read people's minds and glean information from it. However, some people are very good at guarding their minds, so this isn't just a simple I can read everybody's mind situation. Often a cipher won't be able to read, for instance, another cipher's mind who is aware of how to block that type of thing from happening. But as I mentioned with mind control, that power of being able to get into someone's mind goes all the way to being able to control that person physically. And then, of course, all of their abilities seem to just attack a person's soul energy. Now, again, in-game ciphers are pretty cool. They kind of act as a sort of melee wizardy type. Cipher powers don't have a per-day usage limit, so as long as you have the focus and can build that focus up, you can then use your powers continuously. You just have to have the spending requirement of focus. So they get to use these spell-like abilities, but also engage in some sort of melee combat, which they have to do to get their focus up. Now that can be through ranged combat with, say, a bow or something, but basically they have to be engaged in combat with their weapons to build their focus. And we see this through the passive ability that all of them get called Soul Whip, which basically bathes their weapon in flames and is what allows them to build their focus up to begin with. But there you go, guys, just a little bit on what ciphers and their abilities in-game as well as in the lore look like. Just a really cool overall concept that I'm pretty fond of myself. Truly, just thank you guys so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.